Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of MUTHA LIFE, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. A wise person once said, I believe our episode 26 star, Gabby Richmond, hot girls have stomach problems. As a girl coming into my hot mom era, there are few relationships more important to me than with my doctors who keep said gastro problems in check. And this week, I got to do something I think many of us have wished we could do at some point or another in our lives. Flip the script on our doctors and grill them about their personal stuff. And I kind of have TikTok to thank for making that happen. As someone who had barely dipped my toe into TikTok life beyond being a voyeur of cute chicken videos, on a whim I posted a video of me swallowing a capsule camera for a special kind of endoscopy. Almost 17 million views later, the video has taken on a life of its own and raised a lot of questions about all things gastro. So for the first half-ish of this episode, we gave Puja the standard MUTHA LIFE runaround. We get down with birth order stereotypes, work-life balance after having kids, all of the classic MUTHA LIFE fare you've come to know and love. And then we spend some time answering some listener questions because, as you can imagine, with 700,000 likes and thousands of comments, people have a lot of questions for Dr. Puja. And damn, she's the right doctor to be taking this all on. She's the clinical director of women's health at the Inflammatory Bowel Disease Center of Cedars-Sinai. She's a research powerhouse who specializes in women with inflammatory bowel disease, and she's got 3 kids of her own. If you listen to this pod, you're probably comfy with talking about poop. Butts, really sort of any body effluence. If that's not your jam for some wild reason, I guess you could duck out at the 33-minute mark, but I think you'd be missing out. Also, a somewhat obvious disclaimer, none of this is medical advice. If you have questions or concerns about your specific situation, go see your doctor. Stat! Was that good? Did I sound like I'm on the pit? Anyway, enjoy, like, comment, share with a friend. All fart jokes are welcome. I'm so excited you're doing this. Can I call you Puja while we're doing this?
Yes, you can call me Puja at like forever. You don't have to. It sounds so weird when somebody calls me Dr. Khanna.
Seriously? Don't you feel like I
yeah.
went through 5,000 years of medical school? Bitch better call me doctor. You know? No?
Well, no. I feel like when they talk to me, they'll realize that I'm the doctor much more than just a label that doctor means. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
So
I do.
It's
like let me serve you the latest research.
I was like, let me just explain myself, and then you'll have all the information you want.
Who's your doctor now? Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's a very, you know what? That's very classy. I appreciate that. It's very classy. So welcome to the virtual closet. If you were here in real life, we would be in my actual closet, but this is more spacious. And you might as well be on the other coast if you live like one of the beaches. You live far is the point.
Manhattan Beach, yeah.
Never been there. Another universe to me. But I'm super happy to have you here. We got a surprisingly large number of listener questions.
Ooh, that's good.
While you are here as an expert, Puja, we have to do some of the regular format with you because it is interesting. Because not only you're a doctor, you're a very specific kind of doctor. And becoming a doctor is highly competitive. And in my mind, because I think with my stomach, like diarrhea inducing experience going through medical school, all the tests, everything. So I want to just talk about little Puja just a little bit to get a sense of like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the South Bay, so Redondo Beach and Manhattan Beach. I didn't move very far.
This is what I mean. I hear it's a nice place to live, and it's, I think, a huge compliment to a place when somebody moves back to where they're from. And it must mean that you didn't have that much childhood trauma either, because you weren't like, let me get the hell out of here. You stayed close.
No. Yeah, I did. I listened to your last podcast where you commented on it a little bit. So I I am definitely one of those people who's very close to my parents and didn't have a lot of trauma growing up. And um, it's the beach cities. Like it's beautiful here and the beach is there. And I don't know, like I'm a fair weathered girl. Like I can't handle two extremes of
She's a
temperatures.
delicate flower.
So yeah. So this is perfect. It like doesn't get below 60 and it doesn't go above 80. So I have like this narrow range of temperatures that I can handle. And so this is just the
But
perfect place.
what was it like to grow up there? Because I'm just going to call a spade here. In my mind, it is like one of the whitest places you could live. Is that true or not true?
It was true when I was growing up. I think there were only two Indian families in Manhattan Beach at that time. Interestingly enough, we had the same last name. Um, so I remember like the moving van pulling into our new house in Manhattan Beach and having this other family wait for us and be like, "Hi, how are you? You're the only other Indian
That's
family
so
here."
sweet.
But my brother, I think, went through a lot of the sort of, environment that that lack of diversity in Manhattan Beach. I went through a lot of my schooling in Redondo Beach, and I ended up going to Redondo Union High School, and that was actually quite ethnically diverse, which is interesting because they're like right next to each
Yeah.
other, you know? Um, but I think over time, Manhattan Beach has become a lot more diverse, and actually, there's a pretty large Indian community here, interestingly enough now.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
Now, your parents were they born here?
No, so my dad was born in India. My mom, interestingly enough, was born in Mozambique in Africa.
Cool. I've been there.
And
Nice
my
place.
grandparents,
She
yeah,
loves
my
a good
grandparents
beach, your
lived in,
mom,
I know, right?
actually. Yeah.
My grandparents lived in South Africa for a while, but my mom went to a boarding school in India. And then my mom immigrated here when she was 16, and my dad came later in life, and they met in San Francisco.
And would you say they play to any of the stereotypes of like immigrant parents in terms of their expectations for their kids?
Yes and no. Like the family dynamics, my mom is quite a progressive woman. I think, she doesn't fit your stereotypical Indian woman, which is I think why I've turned out the way that I have. But it is they like, Indian parents value education and that was like the one thing like you couldn't date when you were in high school. Like you need to study, you need to become a doctor. Like that's, that was everything that they kind of pushed me towards. Um,
What about your brother?
knowing I think my brother's in finance,
Okay, so
so
you guys
he's
did it. Like whether or not we realize it, like we're achieving some American dream stuff here for your parents.
yeah, yeah.
Do you think either of you like did you ever remember talking about that growing up? Like any did you like feel a sense of expectation? Was there ever a part of you that was like, well, I definitely cannot go into interpretive dance?
I think the problem is I'm the firstborn child, and your typical firstborn child syndrome where you're the rule follower and you're kind of the one that's more driven. And I think that played into just my personality itself. And so I think it just kind of I had that inner drive anyways, and I think it suited them, right? There was no disappointment on that
Yeah.
front.
And then in terms of medicine and having an interest, like in school, were you just always gravitating toward the sciences? How did you know that this was an area you were
Yeah.
interested in?
I don't remember what happened that made me want to be a doctor per se. I think I always kind of knew that I liked kind of caring for people. I was, the cousin that always took care of the younger cousins. I was the older sister that always took care of, my younger brother. And so I think that like that nurturing kind of personality is what drove me to medicine. I started out wanting to be a pediatrician because I love kids.
What a
Um,
grind.
and that got derailed real quickly though.
Yeah.
And so I think that I liked biology and I just kind of kept chugging away and then it just seemed like the only natural course for me.
And then as you're kind of chugging away, moving forward and studying all of this stuff, it sounds like you're not getting a lot of time out of the house besides like your sort of academic extracurriculars and studying. And then where do you go to college?
UCLA.
Okay, so we traveled far. We went to UCLA.
I know.
And then
Exactly.
when you got there, were you didn't like you lived on campus?
Yes.
Was this
So
what sort of
originally,
experience was that?
oh, it was amazing. I mean, I was close enough to home that I could come home and do my laundry like on the weekends. But I remember talking to my mom and saying, it's not that far. I had gone to visit Berkeley, and I think I was too chicken to go that far from home because I was never that kid that could leave my parents when I was growing up.
Sweet.
So I was like, okay, this is just far enough that I can get the college experience and kind of be by myself without being too far in case I want to run home. But it was great, and I remember telling my mom, "Oh, I'll just go for the first year to get the dorm experience, and I just want the dorm experience." And then, year one became year two, which then I'm like, I kind of want to live in an
Yeah.
apartment. Year three, and then year four, and I never went back home after that.
And then
But
and then in that time were you doing the like pre-med thing?
I
You were a
was.
woman with a
I
plan.
didn't. I didn't know any better at that point in time, I think.
Yeah.
It's like if I could go back and do things differently, I definitely would have done things differently. But
Like
I think at
what?
that point it was like I would have majored in English.
Huh.
I was so focused on I need to do physiology, I need to do this, I need to do that. I want to go to medicine, I want to go into medical school. And I think that now I look back and I was like, oh, I wish I had taken more history. Oh, I wish I had studied Shakespeare. I loved reading Shakespeare. Like I just
And there
so
are
in,
not a
in my
lot of you who
retirement, that's
love
going to be my
reading Shakespeare, so he needs you.
it's like seriously it's like but I was like, oh, I'll do it later. And then later is now I'm 45 and here's later.
Have kids banging down the doors. But okay, so we have a plan for retirement. That's always important. And then so you're gonna go through the whole medical school process, which is famously rigorous and stressful. And it's a little bit like Jesus take the wheel, right? Because like it's kind of not beggars can't be choosers, but it's a highly competitive thing. And it's not like saying like, oh, here are my top two schools and I'll go to one of them. You have to kind of cast a wide net, right?
Yeah.
And so you end up having to leave home for that, right?
Ooh, and actually, that's a really funny story. Year that the applications went online, and actually, there was a class action lawsuit at that time because they lost a bunch of applications, and mine was one of them. And so I didn't find out until late, and so the UCs were kind of like, "Oh, sorry, can't come here." And so my mom and I remember just scrambling, like FedExing our applications to a bunch of different places, and I got a few interviews, and I ended up traveling to New York for interviews. I interviewed at Mount Sinai and I interviewed at Albert Einstein. And when I got to Einstein, they didn't have the person who was supposed to interview me there. So I was like, man, this sucks. I don't think I'm getting into medical school. The guy had gone on vacation, I guess, and
No.
yeah, and didn't tell anybody. And so they were scrambling to find someone to interview me. Thankfully, I was like, I flew out all the way from the West Coast. Like,
Yeah.
please, please, please find somebody. And at that point, I really wanted to go to Mount Sinai. Einstein wasn't like, it was in the Bronx. It was just, I don't know. I just didn't get this like amazing feeling. So I remember walking, I finally found somebody and walked to the guy's office and I sat outside and I was waiting there going, this is going to be great, right? He's not going to even be interested in talking to me. So I go in there and we start, chatting and he looks at my file and he's like, oh, you're from LA. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, that's great. And he's like, oh, what do your parents do? I was like, oh, my dad owns an Indian restaurant. And he's like, oh, that's really interesting. And he's like, I really like, I have family in LA. I eat Indian food there all the time. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And he was like, what's the name of your dad's Indian restaurant? Where is it? I was like, it's in Brentwood. And he looks at me and he's like, is it the Clay Pit? And I was like, oh my God, this man, his favorite Indian restaurant was
Yes.
my dad's Indian restaurant. And so I walked out of there going, man, if I don't get into this school, like, I don't know what's going to happen.
That is
And sure enough,
incredible. That is
I
incredible.
mean, it is,
Also,
it
I was
is.
going to
And
ask
it's
you what
like,
your parents did when you were growing up, and so now we know.
it's just so random, right? I mean, it's like, I don't know how the world works, but that was just like, wow.
And that is a
So, yeah.
incredibly small universe. That is see saying being from LA paid off even all the way over there on the East Coast. Um but wait, let's talk about that for a second. So your dad owned this restaurant. What about did your mom work at the restaurant? Was she at home? What was she doing?
No, she also is in finance. She's worked for the same company for like 30 years.
Okay. So we have
So,
two people grinding it out in very different ways, working really different hours as well.
yes, very
Um,
much so.
so are we having family dinners together growing up?
Once a week.
Once a week.
Sunday night was family dinner. Yeah.
And is there something from your childhood, like a meal that makes you feel really nostalgic or that you think about and you either make it for your kids or you miss it?
Oh, we ate a lot of restaurant food growing up, so I have my favorite like shrimp curry that came from my dad's restaurant that we would eat all the time.
Sounds amazing.
Um, yeah, and it was just, I mean, I guess that's the things that I remember the most. So much so that when I got married, I wanted that same food at my wedding,
That's
but
so
unfortunately
sweet.
the restaurant was no longer existed at that point in time.
That's very sad. But do you have the recipe? Do you cook?
I do. I do.
She does it all,
It's not
folks.
as good though. It's not
It's
as good.
never as
No,
good if you
no,
make it yourself.
no. And I'm not, I mean, I'm also not the main cook in my nuclear family now.
We're
It's
we're gonna get to the division of labor. Well,
yeah.
let's go through. Okay, so you get to medical school, you're in New York, big change, you're far from home for the first time. What did you learn about yourself during that period of time? Or were you just like locked up in the
I
library trying to survive?
Oh no, I think I went a little crazy my first year of medical school.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoyed myself in New York City. And I learned that I just New York wasn't really the place for me. I think it was hard. I mean, it was hard being so far from home
Yeah.
for that long. And you're thrown in the midst of medical school and studying and trying to make it. And I definitely, I made, interestingly enough, I made a few really close friends, and they were from California. Actually, they went to UCLA. We were just different years, and so we all kind of bonded. Like the Californians all bonded together in New York City and hung out for that time. But every opportunity that I could come back, I came back.
Oh. And then at what point in this process? Well, okay. So, one thing, my dad's a doctor. I remember him telling me growing up that it was crazy competitive in his medical school, and people would like throw each other's books out and stuff like before
Yeah.
exams. Really gnarly environment. Did you experience any of that like level of sort of toxic competitiveness?
I think I surrounded by myself with people that were good and that were like uplifting. But I definitely felt like some of my classmates were like, "Oh, you're not smart enough." Like when I graduated, I mean, I did well in medical school and I graduated with this specific type of honor that you can get. I remember like some of my classmates just kind of saying, how did you do that? Like, how did you get there?" And I was like, why
I
is it,
stayed in my lane and I did my work.
exactly, exactly.
I
It's like
wasn't
you may not think
mean
that.
mugging people all the time.
So it's like, but, and I think that you just have to, surround yourself with the right people
I
when
th-
you're doing something like that.
yeah, I think that's a good life philosophy. And then when does you're married now?
I am.
When does your other half come into the picture?
In 2012, so many, many years later.
Many years later. So, okay, so then before we get to that chapter, you finish medical school, but you do your residency back here in LA.
I
Were
do.
you happy as a clam to be home?
Oh, yes. I remember opening that day, that envelope on match day, going, UCLA, yes.
It's such a crazy thing, like the way that again, this process, like the fate of your next however many years is in somebody else's hands is just nuts.
Yeah.
And then so you come back to LA. Now you do your full residency and then you start to specialize. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so I did 3 years of internal medicine residency, and then I matched for fellowship, and I did 3 years of a GI fellowship. And at that time, UCLA was in a five hospital system for fellowship, which Cedars-Sinai was one of the five. And so I did that. And I was really mostly at Cedars because I had an interest in IBD.
And for our East Coast listeners, I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Cedars, but it's the Jimmy Jam when it comes to West Coast hospitals and nationwide. So, like, that's not nothing. That's a pretty big deal. And when you're going through this process, I have a couple of questions. One, did you ever get the ick? Was there like something like I could be a doctor if not for like all of the gross shit that you do. Like there's a lot of just like viscerally gross stuff that happens, especially when you're dealing with the GI tract. Are you just immune to, like, did you have to build an immunity to the grossness, or how are you just naturally immune to the ick?
I think it just depends on what type of ick there is. So when you put me in like my surgical rotations where they were like, filleting people open and like their organs were, yeah, that was not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But, blood, like, that I guess coming out of places doesn't bother me so much. Stool coming out of places doesn't bother me so much. I don't know. It's, as long as I think I'm not in the operating room, I think I'm okay. I think that's, you
But
know.
and then how did the interest specifically in gastro stuff come into view? How, like, did you have any gastro issues yourself or anybody in your family? Like, how did that sort of enter your area of interest?
It goes actually back to my dad's restaurant. So I think I can tie everything important in my life as happening in relation to that place. I tell you, it's crazy. So I actually met, and I don't think you've met her yet, but she's our new executive medical director. Her name is Maria Abreu. She just returned to Cedars-Sinai. I met her when I was 18. She used to come to my dad's restaurant, and I was looking for
Wow.
research because I wanted to go into medicine. And she was like, "Oh, I have a lab at Cedars. Come do research with me." So when I was 18, I started in her lab just trying to do research for to get into medical school because you needed to have like papers and you needed to do all these things. And so, but I remember going to clinic with her and I remember seeing her interact with these IBD patients, and she's this dynamic personality. And I just saw like this amazing relationship between this quite young patient who had this chronic disease and this doctor. And it was the coolest thing ever because you could see this bond between these two people, and you could see how important the patient was to her and how important she was to the patient. And it reminded me very much like the primary care type of relationship that
Yeah.
happens, but just in a much cooler like environment because you could do procedures and things like that. So I wasn't, I think that was my first taste, and I continued to do research with her until she, disappeared as she went to Mount Sinai and then University of Miami. Um, and then I got absorbed into like her mentor's lab, which was Dr. Targan at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and I just stayed in that environment. And I think that mentorship is really what drew me into the field.
Wow.
Um, and then the patients, like that relationship by far is the best thing that I experience day in and day out to this day of my career is that relationship.
Well, what's so interesting, and first of all, the fact that you said that your interest in GI started in an Indian restaurant, like, way to play to a stereotype, like, so it's very funny. You took a turn I wasn't expecting. Appreciate that. But it is so interesting to hear sort of the importance of the people and the environment in terms of having an impact on your specialization. Like when somebody goes into like dermatology, I'm always like, why did you choose that? Like, where does that come from being on this side? And also, like, you're talking about your poop with somebody, it's immediately intimate. Like, it's really
Oh,
hard. Like, and also, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a minute, but like, because we know so much now about how our like mental health and our gut biome are related and like the impact of stress on autoimmune disease and all of this stuff, like, it is a deeply intimate relationship because you're not just talking about how often you poop, like, you're talking about really big life questions when you're talking to somebody, right?
right, right.
Very unique relationship. Okay, so now let's fast forward to meeting your husband, or husband, I presumed.
Husband.
Husband. So you meet your husband in 2012 in LA. What does he do when you're
He's an
meeting?
orthopedics. He's an orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
So we were actually introduced. His cousin is a lifelong kind of family friend of my parents, and so he moved out here to Los Angeles after his fellowship in joints, in total joints from San Diego. And someone was like, "Hey, are you interested in meeting somebody?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?"
So
And
you
then
got
so we were
some.
we were set up.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
cute. Now you guys meet. Surgeons have a particular personality reputation. Does he?
Very much so. And my husband is not that person.
Well, okay, because obviously we don't know each other super well, but like you don't strike me as somebody who's going to go for that flavor of the month, the surgeon, the stereotypical surgeon. So what is he like? And like what, you both work these very demanding jobs. What is it that like keeps you together? What's the shared interest?
So my husband doesn't have your typical surgeon's personality, right? He's a total joint surgeon. So he operates on like 90-year-olds that need hip replacements and knee replacements. And, he is by far like just the kindest person I know. Like anybody will tell you when you meet him, he's got like the kindest eyes. And I think for us, we're both lifelong learners, but there's this like degree of, I don't know, it's like there's this degree of support and equality in our relationship that I don't think exists culturally necessarily in couples. And like I don't embody your typical Indian woman. Like I don't cook. Like but I found someone that just perfectly complements me, I think is just the best way to put it.
Well, I also think what's so interesting, right, is like you're both working doctors. Like how on earth, like there's a level of, I mean, sure, somebody might make more money than somebody else, but in terms of like respecting and understanding the import of each other's work and your job, like there's a level of mutual respect that's really hard to gain. I mean, also just like somebody having a shitty day and then coming home, or like something bad happens at work and being able to share with each other, there's just got to be a common language that has to be pretty
Yeah.
unique. What's his name?
Yeah, and
Well, let's give him a shout out. What's his name?
Gaurav,
Shout out, Gaurav.
he's gonna love this. Um,
Good job. Don't worry.
it
I'm going to
is
also
just
ask her what she fights about with you. So you're not off the hook yet, Gaurav. Um,
it's no, it's just nice because like I think that when you care about what the other person says or thinks or you respect their opinion, then you're like constantly talking and bouncing things off each other and like growing together. And I think it's just fun. Like every day is just
oh
fun.
my
Like there's
God,
nobody that I'd rather
you are
like
in
hang out
love.
with.
You're in love.
I
Oh
am.
my
I
God.
shh, don't tell them that.
Breaking news. This is very sweet. Now, did you both know that you wanted to have a family?
Yes. Very, very, very quickly.
And when you were going into that, did you have, I know you said that sort of non-traditional division of labor and expectations around that. Did you have an idea of like, I want to be this kind of parent? And do you think he did? Or was it like a total paint, figure it out as we go?
No, I think we knew kind of how we were raised and we recognized what we liked about it and what we didn't like about it. And I think that kind of helps you decide what type of a parent you were.
Yeah.
And to this day, in fact, we were just talking the other day about our kids, and I think he and I at one point sat down with each other and we are like, we're just gonna love them. Like no matter what, we just gonna love them. Through the ups, through the downs, through the like, I screwed up mom, I screwed up dad, like we are just gonna love them. And if we just love them and they feel that love, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And I think
And
we try to live by that in general.
And I think the research suggests that that is the right approach because, like, everything else, it's impossible to be perfect. It's impossible. And, like, they are
Right.
going to piss you off, or at least I'll speak for myself. They're going to piss me off. And there are going to be times
Yeah.
where they really are annoying or get under my skin. But, like, I just remind myself that if after every annoying thing they do, and I have whatever annoying reaction I'm going to have to that, if I just say, like, I love you, buddy, like, I'm happy I get to be your mom, then I just hope that in the grand scheme of things, we're making a balance. The balance sheet is coming out in
Yeah.
my favor. I like that a lot.
No, I completely agree.
So, where are you in your career when you have your first child? Because you have two?
I have three.
Three. Oh my God, you have a million children. Puja.
I know, seriously, you're telling me. And they're quite close together too. I don't know what I was thinking at that point in time, but Um, I have, well, a now 11-year-old, a now 9-year-old, and an 8-year-old. Two boys and a girl. The last one's a girl.
Wow. And so, where are you in your career 11 years ago?
So I was at Cedars-Sinai. I was in a research lab writing my first grant when I was pregnant and about to have my firstborn, Ayush. And I had a difficult pregnancy. I had gestational hypertension. I was put on bed rest. And then he came and life changed dramatically. Um, I actually ended up leaving Cedars at that point and saying, I think the research track is not the right thing for me. I hadn't gotten my first grant, and I think I was struggling a little bit with I don't want to struggle, in the research world. I need some security now that I'm bringing a child into the world. Um, Los Angeles is expensive. We need to buy a house.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's just all those thoughts. And so I ended up I ended up leaving, and which is funny because that was like my dream job.
Yeah.
Like Cedars, that literally was my dream job. I had worked so hard and all these like fortuitous things had happened to lead me there. And, I was such a lucky person that I felt so much guilt about walking away. But I decided at that point, like that was probably what was best for me and my family and my now newborn son. And it was amazing. Like I got to stay home. I worked part-time for the first 8 months. I went to Kaiser Permanente. It was a per diem GI physician, general GI physician with a focus in IBD at that point. And I stayed there, and then I became an associate and, started working full time and then became a partner and actually was there through the birth of my second and then my third child. And so I was there for almost 9.5 years.
And from what I've heard, doctors often like Kaiser because of the hours and stuff. It's a little bit more family friendly. And like, there might be like a pay trade off or a prestige trade off, but like, it's good if you do have a family. It's a good place to be.
Right. The work-life balance was thought to be good then at that time.
And how was it for you? So for me, I would have like really struggled with like being angry at like at I don't know, like the patriarchy or something would have made me mad that like I was the one. And then because your husband's just tootling along working on his old people's hips or whatever he's doing over here,
Yeah.
and like nothing changes for him, right? I
Right.
know that you made the choice, but like did you ever feel like upset or frustrated or mad that like this is detour happened?
No, not initially. I mean, I think I was very happy. Like I was raising my son and then I was pregnant again and I got to, hang out with them for maternity. Like I don't know, I was just kind of chugging along. And I think for the first 5 years I was totally fine. And I think the itch came after that. Like after my kids didn't necessarily need me as much. My youngest, was probably around, 4 or 5 at that point. And I don't know, there was something it was like around 20, well, yeah, 20, I'd say 2019 was really where I was like, I think I need something else to fill some of my time
Yeah.
or do something.
Well, and this also
Yeah.
goes back to the like obsession with learning, right? Like for
Right.
you, it's about the patient experience, but it's also about like advancing the field and asking new questions
Right.
and constantly trying to push the envelope, which is if you're only seeing patients, you can't really do that.
Right. Exactly.
And so then
And
you,
frankly, I was bored.
yeah, that be frank. And
Yeah.
and I, like I also feel like sometimes when I'll use the analogy of like friends who are lawyers and they go into law for like this one feeling, it's like a feeling or a compulsion that drives them and it's like the right from wrong. And then they go into law and like it's not as much about right from wrong as they thought it was going to be. And I imagine similarly when you're doing something like this, it's like I went into this for the patients or whatever it is, and then you get a certain down the line and then you're just like, okay, I've kind of hit my capacity of what I can do in this way. I'm ready for the next thing. And so your
Right.
next thing is coming back to Cedars.
Yeah. So they had reached out to me like a couple points during the years and I was like, "Oh, I don't know anybody that would be interested. I'm not interested in going back." And then it kind of they reached out to me in probably, early 2023 and was like, "Hey, we had a couple people leave and we have a couple opportunities. One of them is to kind of grow our women's health program. Do you know anyone that's interested? And I was kind of like, I was like, well, I'm kind of interested. And so, and at that point, like I just, I didn't know what was going to happen. I talked to my husband about it, and he was like, yeah, just go see what it's about. Like, and then, we just started talking, and they were able to, we were able to work something out, and I became the clinical director of women's health and inflammatory bowel disease. And it's been an amazing, I've been here a year and a half, and it's been an amazing year and a half. I mean, I don't know. I'm super happy, like on a day-to-day basis.
It's so clear to anybody who meets you that you love your job. Like that you love your job because you're like doing the extra credit. You're like making sure that there's an amazing conference happening, which I'm going to put info about in the show notes for free for patients. You're like trying to find good sponsors for the conference. You're doing the extra credit, which I know for sure is not in your job description, strictly speaking,
Right.
but like that's how you know you love it, right?
Yeah,
There's a
it is.
sparkle in your
I mean,
eye.
it's, yeah. My husband says the same thing. He's like, every day you come home and you're happy. Like you weren't, it's not that I was unhappy. I didn't have that sparkle
Yeah.
anymore.
It's an amazing thing to see. And honestly, I mean, when I first met you, so the backstory for listeners, and I'm not going to talk about my case because you can't talk about my case. I mean, I'll talk about it. You don't have to say anything. But there was an amazing woman who ran this center before you, Dr. Banthala. And she actually left to go back to UCLA. So everybody's moving around. And I came in, I was relatively new to the center. My doctor, who I've talked about before, Dr. Simi Singh, who I'm obsessed with, we went to high school together. She's the bee's knees. Everyone knows that. Simi was like, I think you'd benefit from being part of this like more universe. Like there's just a lot of resources that would be useful for you. And Dr. B was great. You come in. And one of the things that I loved when I met you for the first time is you mentioned like, I'm here after taking this like kind of break to raise young kids. And like now I'm back in the space where I want to be, and I'm really happy to be here. And as a parent who is navigating sort of career and young kids, it was just nice to hear somebody who I view to be so successful and so prolific to like also be dealing with the same shit. It's like Beyonce still has to think about who her babysitter is when
Hmm.
she's on tour or whatever it is. It was just like, oh, this is great. Like we're still humans. You're the doctor, I'm the patient, but like it was very humanizing. And then I was like, well, I'm not going to have the balls to ask her to be on my podcast. But then I had to, because as you know, I took this video of me swallowing my capsule endoscopy pill that now almost 15 or 16 million people have viewed. People love this video. And now I was like, okay, well, now I have like a good, legitimate excuse to ask her all sorts of questions. And that's how we get to today. So we're going to switch over to just like being able to use you as the well of knowledge you are. And I figure could just start with people. I think their minds were blown by this video in part because I am obviously swallowing something that is not food, nor it is a pill. It is very much inorganic matter that I'm putting in my body, and it's like flashing. So can you just quickly explain what is this procedure and why do people like you order it?
So you swallowed a little sort of pill-sized camera called a capsule. And it is, I think, one of the most remarkable devices that we have in GI because it basically is like a little video camera, and you swallow it and it just takes video as it goes down, your esophagus, your stomach. And it's really designed to look at people's small intestine, and it just kind of floats along in your small intestine taking video, and you just kind of goes through the entire small intestine, passes into the colon, and then you poop it out. And all that data gets transmitted to a recorder that I then get to sit and watch. And it's used for a variety of different things. I mean, it's used to evaluate the small intestine in Crohn's disease, which is kind of one of the two forms of inflammatory bowel disease.
Everyone knows
It's
that's what I
used to,
have, everybody. I'm a Crohn's girl. Shout out.
yeah, it's also used to look for bleeding in the small intestine. Sometimes when people are bleeding and we can't figure out where. So it's if there's something on a CAT scan that people see, whether it's like a tumor or something, people sometimes will pass the capsule that way to take a video to see like what is it that we're seeing. So it's used for a variety of reasons, but I use it predominantly to look for small bowel inflammation and Crohn's disease.
And the trade-off between doing that and a traditional endoscopy?
So a traditional endoscopy can't actually get that far into the small intestine. So
Aha.
when they
Okay.
scope you from above, it just goes into the very first part of the small intestine. Or when you have a colonoscopy from below, you can just get into a small piece of the small intestine. So there's this whole big track in the middle that we just don't quite meet.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Now, some other quick questions just related to this, and I'm mainly clarifying the answers that I am almost certain are correct. But one, everyone's like, how does that survive stomach acid? But that's just like a medical grade plastic or whatever that's designed, right? Like,
Right.
I think people have a almost misconception about how strong stomach acid is because when you learn about it in school, I mean, yes, it's strong, but like it can't digest certain undigestible things, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Correct.
good. One popular question I got, which I did already clarify for people, was does the camera see you pooping, like you see your butthole when it comes out? And I said no, because the transmitter has already been returned. So there's no way to, for anybody to receive this information. But people were extremely interested if the camera was taking pictures of my butt as I was pooping it out.
So there are people who can pass the capsule into a toilet and you see it fall into the toilet, but you don't actually, because you're the inside, right? So you don't really see anything from the perspective of being outside. So you just see colon, 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 and then you see toilet, and that's it. And
Okay.
so it's not like,
Sorry,
so
everybody.
I guess, I know.
Everyone's be really disappointed to hear that. Now, let's talk a little bit about Crohn's disease. And like, first, let's just start with a very simple definition about what it is and how it's generally diagnosed.
So Crohn's disease is one of the two inflammatory bowel diseases, and it's a chronic inflammatory disease of the GI tract, and it can affect anywhere from your mouth all the way down to your bottom. People have it in different places. Sometimes it's just in your small intestine, sometimes it's in your small intestine and your colon. And it's a complicated disease. It's not that everyone can get it. It's what we call a heterogeneous disease, so it manifests differently in each individual, but there's some genetic component to it. And then there's some environmental trigger that basically sends your immune system out of whack, and your immune system starts reacting to kind of the normal bacterial flora that's in your gut and says, "Oh, hey, you're not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to attack you and create all this inflammation." When in reality, that's just your normal flora that's there.
Now, environmental trigger, could that be something like an extreme stress event or like what are some of those sort of triggers?
There's a wide variety of triggers. I think we're still trying to understand all of the environmental influences. Smoking can be a trigger, a severe stressful event can be a trigger, various viral infections like norovirus can be a trigger. And we think it's not just one thing. I think as we start to understand this disease a little bit more, it may be that there's a multi-hit hypothesis, right? Where you have the genetic susceptibility, and then there's a series of environmental events that happen and then lead you to develop the disease.
It's like a total whack-a-mole situation because it's
Right.
like, as somebody who has it, you're constantly trying to figure out like, well, can I eat kale? Oh, I can only eat kale if I'm not flaring. But like, is eating the kale causing a flare? Like, it's real confusing mind mapping sort of stuff. For me personally, Dr. Banthala actually raised the idea that like it's possible to have altitude be a trigger, which is something like flying, which is something I had never
Mm-hmm.
considered before. And I used to fly monthly internationally for 10 years to places like India, Pakistan, sub-Saharan Africa, and I would show up and almost always get food poisoning. And it like almost every time, and like really bad food poisoning. And it wasn't until literally 2 years ago, she was like, actually, I think you just like have an altitude trigger thing. I mean, I've had Crohn since I was 16 and I'm only learning things now at almost 40 about it. It's just
Yeah.
insanely confusing. And let's just talk a little bit about like Crohn's as an autoimmune disease, which you mentioned. it seems to be that there is like a rise in autoimmune diseases or talking about them or being diagnosed. Like, what is your sort of take on autoimmune diseases in the world and prevalence of? Is it just that we're talking about it more, or people are more open about what's going on, or are they being diagnosed more?
No, I think they're being diagnosed more. And I think, in especially in the IBD world, we're sort of seeing this industrialization of countries and westernization of countries that didn't have such high incidences of inflammatory bowel disease. And you can actually see as the that country becomes more westernized, and it's probably diet related. There's some diet and, well, I should say diet and other environmental triggers that are associated with sort of the industrialization and westernization of these countries that are then accounting for this rise in incidence of these diseases. And I think, from an autoimmune standpoint, and women are more likely to get autoimmune diseases. And part of that is genetics. Part of that, obviously, is because we have two X chromosomes. Part of that is hormonal.
Hmm.
And they're all complicated or complex, diseases. And so it's not like a simple explanation as to why women get it more often, but there's definitely a rise.
And that feeds into some of your research, right? Because, like, I mean, I basically, last time I saw you, you were telling me a bunch of different research projects that you're doing now. And I was like, sign me the fuck up for all of them. Like, take my blood, take my poop, like, whatever you need. Because all of them, I mean, if I remember correctly, there's one on like hormone fluctuations and the effect of symptoms. Is that right? Or,
Yeah, it's trying to understand because there's some women with IBD that will have worsening symptoms around the time of either their period or pregnancy or menopause. And it's really trying to understand, is that more of a functional? So is it kind of like an IBS type symptom? Or is it actually true inflammation, which actually can happen? And so it's really trying to understand that because, especially for pregnant women, there's some women who are doing great and they're in remission and they're endoscopically, everything looks normal. Then they get pregnant and boom, they're flaring and we don't really
yeah, I
understand
was
why.
hospitalized with my second because I had a really bad flare at like 12 weeks or something. And it came out of nowhere. And honestly, my periods and my period pain and everything, like every time since having kids, every time I'm like, is this Crohn's or is this period pain? Is it because like I'm bad at knowing what pain feels like at this point, but also I mean, anecdotally there has to be something there. It just, so I'm looking forward to
Right.
seeing what that one. And then the other one that you were doing that I thought was super interesting was the genetic study.
So, I mean, Cedars in general does a lot of genetics work. I mean, we've sort of, we have done research on over 40,000 IBD patients, and we look at genetics and we try to group them into sort of categories to then see, like, is this group of individuals more likely to develop whatever, X, Y, or Z? They've learned through all of these processes over the years that there are sex specific differences in IBD in terms of, disease extent and, we are trying to figure out, is there a difference in response to therapy? Or, women will go on to develop cardiovascular disease. Is there a way to predict that? Is it related to the inflammatory bowel disease? Do our normal treatments that kind of, subdue the inflammation and control the inflammation, does that reduce their risk? So there's a lot of different interests research wise that I have when it comes to taking care of women with inflammatory bowel
How does
disease.
that work with like the balance of your work in terms of like, it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff going and like a lot of moving parts. And I know you obviously have a whole team that works with you on all of this stuff. So like in a given week, do you have like set days that like this is a research day, or like how does all of that fit together?
Interestingly enough, I don't have any research time allocated. It's mostly just clinical work. But and I think that that's the beauty of actually where I work is because we are so, like, from a research perspective, we're so robust, and there's like a whole genomics core, and there's a whole microbiome section, and there's a whole immunology section, and there are people that are doing things in there. And so I feel like I have the coolest part. I get to meet patients and talk to them, and I get to observe things that happen, and I get to ask the clinical question, and then I get to work with all of these, like, brilliant folks who work with me to try to figure out how we can find the answers to this. and
That's
and
so
it's it's
boss.
a it's a
Are
team.
you aware of how boss
It's
that
a team
is?
effort.
But yeah, but that's like extremely boss behavior. As somebody who has been a research assistant like during my doctorate and stuff and like a grunt, let me tell you. And because you've done it for other people. This is real boss behavior, Puja. So,
Yeah, it's a team. It's a team. Like, I just, it's so nice actually because I have a group of women that I highly respect and we meet on a regular basis. And, they are on the immunology side and on the genetic side. And we just bounce ideas off of each other and we get to talk about all these things. And it's just great. It's everyone's like lifting everyone up and everyone's working together.
Well,
And
that
I can't
seems to be
speak,
a theme with you, that
highly enough of them.
you gravitate toward good vibes, I think, is a theme.
Yeah.
If I'm talking in a very like clinical sense, it's good vibes. Now I want to talk a little bit about sort of the specific thing around Crohn's and pregnancy and conception. I mean, we can also talk generally like ulcerative colitis as well. You can say if there's massive differences, but we talked a little bit about like how Crohn's can be worse. I had always heard that like if you're go into pregnancy not flaring or sort of in remission, then you have a very good likelihood of having an uneventful pregnancy. Is that real? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, and it's saying what we know now is that if you're in remission, and we say remission is like endoscopic remission, not just feeling well, but making sure there's no inflammation there,
Yeah.
then you have the best chance at having an uneventful pregnancy because we know that the presence of inflammation in mom is the thing that leads to the greatest adverse outcomes in pregnancy, like preterm labor, having a low birth weight infant, or a small for gestational age infant.
And then on the sort of medical side, so let's talk about, I guess, how Crohn's is treated generally, and like sort of let's first start there. What are the different tools in the toolkit for treating something like Crohn's?
So Crohn's disease, we tend to use more than just kind of the basic medicines that they use for ulcerative colitis, which are the mesalamine-based
Yeah,
compounds.
they don't do
So it
shit.
tends to be more,
They
and
didn't.
not for
Sorry,
Crohn's.
guys, it didn't do shit for me.
Um, so we tend to use more biologic therapy. So there's a variety of different ones. I mean, there's the sort of immunomodulators, which are kind of like the 6-MP and the azathioprine, and then there's the biologic therapies, which you see signs for, ads for on TV all the
Sky
time. It's like
Rizzy.
exactly your anti-TNFs or your anti-IL-23. Skyrizi is an anti-IL-23, or you have JAK inhibitors like Rinvoq or Xeljanz, and there's other there's a bunch of different medications in each category, and those are medicines that basically kind of dampen the immune system a little bit to control the inflammation. And I think for a long time, we didn't really understand the effects in terms of pregnancy. And so many years ago, Dr. Mahadevan at UCSF created the Piano Registry, which is a registry to really understand kind of anti-TNF therapy and thiopurine therapy in women who are pregnant. And it's just grown to answer so many of the questions that we have for TNF therapy and thiopurine therapy in women who are pregnant. During pregnancy, do we change the dose? Do we not change the dose? And I think we've really learned a lot, especially in the last year, about what the right thing to do is.
In the last year.
Well, so yeah, in 2019, we actually, we always have said continue your therapy, but in terms of minimizing the amount of transfer across the placenta that happens in the third trimester, sometimes that dose would be adjusted a little
Yeah.
bit. And we actually, not when I say we, it's not really me, but they, a bunch of doctors, a bunch of IBD specialists and maternal fetal medicine specialists worldwide got together and came out with a bunch of guidelines. And those guidelines were presented at our big national conference in May of 2024. And that's where it said, listen, the largest driver of adverse outcomes in pregnancy is really having disease in the mom. So controlling the disease is really important. So continue the medication throughout pregnancy on schedule so that the mom doesn't flare. Because we know if we can keep mom well, we can keep baby well.
And dare I say, should we be shocked that taking care of mom means things that are better for kids? Dare I say there's a theme here. I know like I talked recently with somebody who took like whatever, I think it was Zoloft or some psychotropic medicine to manage depression through her pregnancy. And she was like, pretty sure me not having like really, really bad thoughts is the best thing. And she, did that in conjunction with her doctor. But just like, if we think about a healthy mom, that's probably a pretty good place to start. So I love that the research also showed that. Now I want to ask you one last question about your personal life, and then, and then I'm going to ask you the listener questions. So, personal life question: life with kids, being a doctor, is is there any like sort of regular trade-off you're having to make? I mean, I know you're in a different sort of more demanding position now, but like, are you on call? Do you have to be on call?
I do.
So is it like growing up, my dad was a pediatrician, and I remember like him always having to leave the dinner table on the nights that he was on call because he was like taking da 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 da. Do you, I mean, in some ways it's pretty cool because your kids get to see you in a small way doing your work and they must be terribly proud of you. Do you feel like there are trade-offs that you have to make that are a little bit unusual because of the nature of your job?
I think it's better now than it was. I think when I was at Kaiser, I was a general gastroenterologist. So, if someone decided to swallow a quarter, I'd have to go fetch it in the middle of the night. Or, if somebody was bleeding, I'd have to go and control it. But I think here, because I'm a super subspecialist in IBD, I think from a call perspective, it's okay. Like I think that I don't really have to leave in the middle of the night. So that is better. But my kids, they still say, like, God, you are home, but you're reading a capsule study or you're doing this, and why do you have to do that? And so they'll say that in the same breath where they're peering over my shoulder going, Mommy, what is that? That's really cool. And
You're
so,
like, that's hour
I
324.
and they're like, what is that? I was like, well, that's poop. And they're like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. What's
But
the conversation like about poop in your house?
oh, they get super embarrassed. Like they laugh that they call me the butt doctor. But the best is, let me tell you. Okay, I have to tell you this. So I went to my fifth graders like career day, and I sat there and I was like telling them, and my son was so embarrassed because he was like, I don't want you to talk about people's butts and I don't want you to talk about poop. But I can tell you, I was like the coolest person there. Like everyone, I've never felt so cool in my entire life because everybody had all these questions like, when I drink and I start to laugh and stuff comes out my nose, like, why is that? And I was like, well, all of that's connected. And, or like, what happens when you have to throw up? And can you hang upside down and still keep your food down? Like, they had all of these, like, really interesting questions. And I was like, I just felt so cool.
As you should. I mean, I feel like there are certain types of professions in society that are kind of universally respected. I mean, granted, we're in a little bit of like a cuckoo time right now with some of these things, but like being a doctor is like you are inherently of service to the community, and there's just like a respect that comes with that. And for kids, it's something they can understand. It's not like I'm a consultant. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's like I help people make their bodies healthy. Like there's something to that. But yeah, the idea of poop not being funny is like, I mean, it's hilarious. It's objectively hilarious.
Oh, oh yeah. My daughter has a whoopee cushion that she walks around squeezing all the time.
Who's
So they
who's
they have
Dr. Butt
my
now?
sense of exactly. They have my sense of humor, right? I'm like, it's funny. Like it's
It's
okay.
okay.
You gotta laugh.
Better be funny. Now, this relates to a reader question, so I'll take interviewer privilege. Um, First of all, how often, like, do you talk to your kids about their own poop? Because they're now at an age where, like, you don't know if they're pooping every day, do you?
No, I don't. I talk to them all the time. Mommy, my tummy hurts. The first question is, did you poop today?
Right.
Yes, yes, I went. Is it normal? And then so they've learned
What to look for.
they've learned all the lingo. Yeah, they've learned like I'm like, we describe poop as like food. Is it like soft serve? Is it like oatmeal? Like, so yeah, they know it all.
And for other people who don't have an expert in the house, if their kid is complaining of a stomach ache, sounds like have you pooped today is a good first question. When should parents like start to escalate I have a stomach ache to a medical professional? When should they sort of like start asking more questions of people with more experience?
I think if anything is really persistent or there's something that you consider to be like really abnormal, like if you see blood, I think that's definitely something to go see. But anything that's persistent, and where kids or even like for yourself, like if you're just not able to eat or not able to drink or any of those sort of normal bodily functions that we do, it's time.
And like when to escalate to a pediatric GI. Like I know that different people have different thresholds with like how far they're going to go just with their pediatrician versus cuz sometimes a pediatrician will say I think you need to see a specialist, but like sometimes they might not, or they might, you know, not necessarily, not for any malice, but like not hear a concern that really is a concern of a parent. When do you feel like if it was your kid, you would say time to kind of go up the chain here?
I mean, I think it again, it has to do with persistence.
Yeah.
Like if there's something that's repeatedly happening and I've addressed it with my pediatrician and the problem isn't going away and it's, been more than like a fewer days, then I would definitely go ask to be evaluated.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions from our readers. Got actually a surprising number of questions. Like, you know, I put these out occasionally, but this is a surprising number. So one person said, ugh, do I really need to get a colonoscopy? Give them the pitch, doc.
Yes, you do really need to get a colonoscopy. So, younger people are being diagnosed with colon cancer at earlier and earlier ages. And so, the screening age used to be 50. The screening age, so that means no symptoms whatsoever, just like now is time for your colonoscopy is now 45. So, yes, get your screening colonoscopy. If you have symptoms that seem abnormal, you have blood in your stool, you have chronic diarrhea, you chronic abdominal pain, like see a gastroenterologist. And a colonoscopy, the hardest part's the prep.
Did a whole video
And
explainer on
then
that one.
it's done before you know it.
Now, another question. So there's some interest. I'll group these questions together because there's like a lot of interest in kind of non-medical interventions or treatments to various things. So like one is red light therapy to reduce inflammation. Have you heard of this working for gut stuff?
I don't think I can comment on that
Great,
one.
no comment. Next one, gentle fascial massage, like fascia massage, in terms of supporting reducing inflammation and discomfort with IBD.
So I've heard of deep massages, and that we have experience with deep massage therapy with adhesions in
What
IBD.
does that mean?
Um, So that's where you have somebody that's specifically trained and they do deeper type massage that, although we can't really say that that happens, is thought to kind of break up some of the scar tissue that's there. So we definitely refer patients for that. But
I can get insurance to
that
pay for a massage potentially.
I don't think insurance pays for it, but I think it definitely works.
Okay, fine.
And so that I've seen.
Um, non-medical treatments for leaky gut. I don't know what leaky gut is. What is leaky gut?
So I think the word leaky gut can be a little bit misleading. And I think that we have an intestinal barrier, right? And naturally, there is feedback across that intestinal barrier because that's how our immune system knows that the bacteria that are there are normal, and that's how our immune system develops. And so you can, like some people will say, well, that's a leaky gut, but actually that's a healthy leaky gut. That's
Hmm.
supposed to happen. You're supposed to get this crosstalk and this kind of passage of things across that barrier. When there is a breakdown because of inflammation or because of ulcerations or if there's changes in the microbiome and bad bacteria are getting across, that's where we start to have a problem. And so, the intestinal barrier is very important, but it's not something that's super easy to repair. And I think we're still learning about all of this, and we're learning about such nuances like, the role of mucus on the lining of the intestine and how it feeds good bacteria and what happens, what that good bacteria then gives. Like it's all this symbiosis relationship between the bacteria in our gut and ourselves. And so I think it's, if there's actually inflammation and there's ulcers and there is, that what we call mucosal breakdown, then that is a leaky gut and that needs to be fixed. But it kind of depends on which spectrum
Hmm.
you're falling into.
So like if you got to that place, you need some real help. Like chomping on some tea leaves or something is not going to do the trick, everybody. Sorry.
Right.
This is just a comment. Hashtag hot girls have stomach issues. That was the comment. Just wanted to share that. I feel that's important. I can, solidarities to my sisters with stomach problems. What causes an esophagus to have spasms? Do you know what that question
That,
means?
yes. So esophageal spasm is a disorder that happens when the musculature of the esophagus just randomly contracts and it can cause pain.
Sounds bad.
Um, and so people they can present with chest pain for that. And if, depending on what your age group is, that can get confusing, right? Because you might feel like you're having a heart attack. And so it's part of the motility disorders of the esophagus that exist.
Well, speaking of motility disorders, we had a bunch of questions about that. So first, can we talk about what is a motility disorder?
So motility kind of refers to how things move within your gastrointestinal tract. So, when you eat, your esophagus has to kind of contract and propel the food into your stomach. Your stomach has to churn everything and propel it into the small intestine. Your intestine has to contract and move it into the colon, and then your colon's got to do its deal and push it out. So there are a bunch of different motility disorders that can exist. People can have gastroparesis, which is where your stomach doesn't empty properly and food kind of sits in your stomach for a lot longer. People can have changes in their small bowel motility or their colon motility, and they can be predisposed to constipation, and that can lead to a variety of other things like bacterial overgrowth. So there's a lot of different things that can happen.
Now, so there's this group of questions. I don't know if this is going to make sense. Again, it's the internet and it's strangers. I love you all of you strangers, but it doesn't mean I totally understand what you're trying to say. So this one person says dysautonomia and autoimmune diseases can affect the nerves in your stomach, causing spasms and gut motility issues. Is that statement true?
Yes, there can be dysautonomic regulation that affects the GI tract.
Now, if you think this is happening to you, what sorts of tests or procedures would you be looking into?
I think if you felt like that was something that people were kind of trying to diagnose you with, I would definitely go and see a motility expert. Because when you kind of look at the field of GI, if you are a subspecialist in GI, like I'm a subspecialist, I'm an IBD specialist. We have motility specialists. You can have pancreatic biliary specialist, and so I would really say that someone that has those problems should definitely see a motility specialist, because they're the sort of the best person and up to date on the latest and the greatest in those types of
Could
issues.
you imagine being like 5 and being like, I'm going to be a motility specialist, gastroenterologist, and I'm going to go to school for 8,000 years. And then I am going to day in and day out just make sure people's stomachs are propelling stuff to the next destination. Like it's unbelievably niche. But I'm glad to know that these people
Right.
exist. Okay, this is the last question. I am hugely interested in the whole gut microbiome world and all of the things that we're starting to learn about how it affects us, holistically. This question is I've seen some research that suggests that the gut microbiome is often abnormal in somebody with an autoimmune disease. She referred to a Yale study. Is this something that you're seeing more work on, and like trying to figure out, are people working to figure out how to make the gut microbiome healthy again, and with the like expectation it has an impact on the autoimmune disease?
Yeah, I think that it became apparent. I think it's probably been like the last 15 or 20 years that there are alterations in the gut microbiome, and there is, in inflammatory bowel disease, there's, changes, and we call it dysbiosis. There's like the ratio of good bacteria to different types of bacteria, or group A bacteria to group B bacteria has been changed, and there's not as much diversity in the gut microbiome of patients with inflammatory bowel disease. And so you see that, and you also recognize that some of these bacteria have beneficial functions in being able to metabolize things or being able to produce certain things for you that you need. And it's that symbiotic relationship that we talked about before. And so there have been attempts to try to restore that, what we call is that balance or that ratios that are there. there were studies about fecal transplant in IBD, and in some people it worked, and in some people it made them worse. And so it was really trying to understand that we're all different. And so, how does this play a role, and how can we try to make it healthy again? What are the good things that we can do? And that's where a lot of our diet therapies have come in. And actually, our conference that we're going to talk about, addresses some of that, and the role of fiber, and how the microbiome plays into your disease. And so, it's really just a really great topic of interest, both on the patient side and on the research side, because the microbiome has been linked to almost like everything.
Yeah. It's crazy.
you know
Well, and on this like food point, and I've mentioned and talked about elsewhere before a lot that my Cedars nutritionists have like really advocated for an enteral nutrition diet, like a liquid-based diet. And we've come to a compromise that like I'm not a monk. I'm not going to drink my calories, all of my calories every day, but I will aim for 30 to 50% of my calories to come from drinking like these specific things that have been, studied, not just like any random shake. And just in terms of like thinking about eating, thinking about your own kids, like what are you thinking about in terms of what you put in your body as somebody who does not have Crohn's disease, but just like as a healthy person? Statistically, most of the people listening to today's episode are just broadly healthy people. But I think we're all taking an interest in trying to make sure that we're laying good sort of groundwork for us and our kids in terms of what we're eating. What are some of the things that you're thinking about?
I think trying to reduce the amount of processed food that you eat, I think that's a really big thing. So, reducing processed food, increasing the amount of fresh fruits and vegetables, increasing the amount of fiber. Fiber, really, like, I feel like in general, our diets are all lacking enough fiber. And I think that, the Mediterranean style diet is really kind of the way to go, minimizing the amount of red meat that you eat. I think all of those things have been shown to be beneficial on multiple levels and multiple diseases, when it comes to colorectal cancer, when it comes to inflammatory bowel disease. And so I think that's what I try to do. Eat as many fresh fruits and vegetables, increase the fiber in your diet, and stick to, less red meat, and try to eliminate processed food as much as you can.
I love it. Well, this has been so great. The last thing, can you just tell us a
Yes.
little bit about what this conference is and what people can expect?
This has been sort of my labor of love for the last year and a half,
The
and
extra
it's a
credit.
conference. Exactly. It's a conference dedicated for clinicians. There's a clinical track, and for patients, a separate patient track that really just focuses on issues that affect women with IBD. So for the doctors and the providers, advanced practice providers, it's about learning to care for women with IBD. For the patients, it's understanding all of these issues that affect you as a woman with IBD, and to really just show a variety of topics and a variety of things that we've learned on pregnancy and fertility and the microbiome and diet and mental health. And it's really just there to show our community what we're doing at Cedars-Sinai, and to really show that we're invested in our community, and we want to, we want to help. We want to be here for you.
Oh, the best. Well, I'm going to put a flyer in the show notes for everybody if you are interested. I will put, I'll put like a link to your Cedars bio if anybody like wants to get in touch with your office if they happen to be here. And something important that I learned actually from one of our early interview guests, Alyssa Calver, who has breast cancer. This is a good piece of advice. If you are struggling to figure out what's going on with you, to figure out a diagnosis, you want somebody else to read your tests, your charts, and your insurance won't cover it, you can always call an office and ask what the out-of-pocket price would be for a appointment. And in her case, it made like a transformative sort of life-changing difference to spend that $500 to get that expert opinion from somewhere else. So if you're feeling really stuck, these are such hard diagnoses, and there's just no like one linear way to find out what's going on with you and your answers, and you want somebody else who's an expert to talk about, just like keep in mind that you do have options outside of what is immediately available to you. Don't feel stuck. That's all I would say to all of you out there.
And just to add to that, Cedars-Sinai has a virtual second opinion program. So where virtually, and I do it from an IBD standpoint, where people have questions about their diagnosis of IBD, or do I have IBD? Can you tell me? And it's just a virtual visit. It's an out-of-pocket cost, but it's probably more affordable than you know, a face-to-face, and they have a
That's so
spectrum of
cool.
kind of what they do.
Amazing.
Yeah. So it's a great option. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Puja, thank you so much for doing this. And I know you don't get asked a bunch of personal questions in your everyday life, but as like a curious person, to be able to ask my doctor a bunch of personal shit, like made the whole thing just a real 10 out of 10 for me. So I appreciate you going along for the ride with us. And you didn't get interrupted by a single child.
No, I was lucky. It was good. They were good.
We'll have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun. I enjoyed myself.
So did I. You're the best. And your husband got off easy. So, go give him a hug or something.
I know. Let him know.
Have a good one.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at MUTHA, MUTHA.life for a daily look at all things mother. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by MUTHA Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.